Hey guys, welcome back for part 2 of constructing the sawmill. Just finished my first log, so more on that later. But I finished the sawmill, so let's start with the saw head and constructing it all, and we'll take it piece by piece. So the next instruction is putting together the carriage assembly. Got a couple of different bolts that they say you need to install, and it's very intimidating when you look at the drawing. The good thing is, that's how they look coming out of the box. They've already got the bearings, they've already got the bolts at the bottom, so really, oh, they just fell over. Really all you need to install is these two long posts going right down the middle. Everything else is already put together for you. And we can actually pick these up straight out of the box. They're very easy to align. Just kind of set them in there. And they roll right on top of that rail. See if I can get a good picture for you. There's a groove in each of those bearings that rides that rail. Kind of see it there. And yeah, they slide pretty nice. Right now it's a little unstable. I can go left and right with it, but once you get the saw head on there and everything tight, it's not going anywhere. And here's that groove that I was talking about. That groove is really deep in there. And you can see that that's a lot of support right there on both sides and the middle to make sure this guy spins freely and your saw is moving through the wood pretty smooth. So I got the carriage assemblies together. I did end up putting all of the nuts on the same side. Luckily, they do that with the bearings. So put all the nuts on the same side. Hopefully I can get those on the inside of the saw and the bolt heads won't stick out too far. I did have to loosen up those bearings about a half turn in order to get some of these posts in. It's a pretty tight fit, so I'll have to tighten all those back up again. And then I'll be ready to put the saw head on. Getting some work done. So I'm tightening up these bolts. Figured I'd let you guys in on a little tip. I have this OS23 magnetic tool holder, and yeah, just put it right on the bunk. Hides all of my sockets. I have them all within arm's reach. So there's a bunch of companies that make these, but yeah, that's where I keep my sockets for when I'm working. And I have a green set for American Standard, and yeah, red metric, green standard. Pretty easy. So I'm getting the saw head out of the crate right now. Had a couple people offer to help, but thought I needed a forklift. Then I figured out that I can tilt the crate, and I've got it on a 4x4, which is resting on the cross beams, and it gives me just enough room to get a moving blanket in there, and then I can pull it up on these two cross bunks to get those guys installed. So I can pull it up onto the cross beams to get those guys installed, one in each direction. So hopefully that works. If not, I'm going to have somebody help me get that saw head just out onto the bunks. So as you can see, I got the saw head laid up there. Now I can access those two black ports for the supports. I did end up pulling a second blanket and loading one side of it a third of the way. Far side over there, I loaded that up a third of the way, put a little 4x4 block underneath, like one of those, and then loaded the other side up about 2/3 of the way, supported it on this beam here against here, and then pulled using this handle all the way up onto the sawmill. So now I can access those ports and get the saw head constructed. As you can see, I got the supports in. They're not all the way pushed in, but I've got the blanket and cardboard underneath of it. I've got them inserted. I just don't have them touching. And I am going to skip this step until I have another person to help me put the saw upright and something to tie it to. I think I might actually install the top of that a little bit so that it's stable when I stand it up, because it's already on the bed. So I might as well try to stand it up and put it right on the rails. So I got this bracket up there, working from the same bag 11 of hardware as per the instructions, and I'm gonna end up connecting this bracket up here just like this so that this back rail can come across. Okay, I got that top bracket on, that angled bracket. It's just in there loose. Now I'm gonna move down here, put that 2-hole bracket right in there and bolt her up. Then I should be able to move to the other side. Okay guys, I got that top bracket in, got the bottom bracket in. They're both just sitting in there loose right now until I get this back plate across here. I don't want to tighten them up anymore. But now I get to put that guy on this side with the same angled bracket and flat bracket with the last of that hardware. So guys, I'm getting to this last couple of steps before uprighting this. It says install the winch shaft cover using those bolts and nuts. Has the bolts, has the washers. Looks like those are hex. However, the bag has these guys, which if you put a washer in there, doesn't reach very far. So I had to take it, remove the washers, then it fits just fine. It fits into that groove just fine. There's nothing to hold on to on this side, so you've got to use the square in there of the bolt to hold it in the hole. So I just skipped that washer, and I think that's the only way you can put it together. But it definitely has hex bolts right there, all 12 of them, and not a single hex bolt in the entire bag. They're all carriage bolts. Keep in mind I still got this saw on the side, so it doesn't look exactly like the picture. It's actually exactly flipped from the picture. But I'm installing those 12 bolts. You can see 4 here, 4 here, 2 here, 2 here. Now my bag is empty. I have 6 bolts on this side. I only have 4 bolts on that side. And this bolt does not have a washer. That one does, this one does not. So I'm short 2 bolts, 2 nuts, and 3 washers from that pack. So I guess I'll see if I find them in the other packs. Now, for those of you that may be worried that I didn't have all those supports all the way in and I was tightening this down and, working on the top, I did go ahead and I tightened it up on both sides. So it's touching those bolt heads on both sides. So that when I get this support all tightened down, which it's obviously not right now, it's rattling when I shake it. But when I get that all tightened down, it should be supported enough to lay right on these tracks just fine. So, finally got the saw head on. As you probably saw in a couple of pictures, we did a little bit of brickwork and put a board under there, and just muscled her up there. So now she slides pretty good. Already got her locked up. Wouldn't say effortless, but it's not too bad. So guys, I'm out here on another day and I'm installing the winch shaft. So I've got it in there. One bracket on the inside, bearing, one bracket on the outside, and I've got the long side on the operator side. And I need to install it with bag 1, which I've got right here in my hand. So should be able to get those 4 bolts in here pretty quick, and then get to installing the handle. So hope to see you guys in a few minutes. Okay guys, I got that all tightened up. Those are 1/2-inch bolts on the inside, which made it really easy. The outside is those flush, just like there, where they just drop into the square and keep themselves tight. So I got those on and those on. And then the bearings, which are right there, are a metric Allen key, size 3mm. And I've got those on tight, so they'll spin right with the bar on both sides. Then I added this locking collar for the handle, which comes next. That one had a metric, but it's a size 5. So if you're having trouble with them, I've just got one of these guys, metric, on both sides, just varying sizes, and it worked really well on the outside and the inside. Little tight on the inside, getting under this lip, but it worked. So now let me get the handle on, and I'll see you guys in the next clip. Okay guys, I'm trying to get this handle on, and I put it on, and I line it up, and I'm just not reaching those bolts to hold it in place. I think I've got to flip this thing around. So I'm gonna have to do that, which covers up those bolts, which will be nice. But yeah, I'm gonna have to flip that around because I've got no space to move it any farther down. I am at the end of that rod. So now I'll flip it around and get the handle installed. So when you're putting this together yourself, make sure those bolts are on the outside. Okay guys, the next step is to put that cable on. Luckily mine came pre-installed with this, so I don't have to install that, and I don't have to install those. However, I do have to remove that bolt in the middle so that I can wire all this up. So next step may take me a little bit, running it all the different places, up and down and up and down again, before finally bolting it to the shaft, which we just installed. So I'll get that cable taken care of and meet you guys in the next clip. So if you've been watching this from the beginning, at one point they said I was missing 2 bolts and a washer. I found the washer. However, the 2 bolts that I'm missing, unlike these 6 over here, I only got 4 over here. Turns out that's necessary for the winch tensioner. However, earlier in the instructions, it has all of those filled in. So I had to remove one of them and put it over there, because that's where I needed it. And now, I don't know if you can see that clearly, but it's a regular bolt. It's not the rounded top with the square that self-tightens. So now I'm going to have two different types of bolts right next to each other. I don't know if that's a mistake or an oversight or somebody replaced these bolts with something else, but I don't know that I like that. But anyway, I'll get the winch tensioner on. Saw does move when I crank the handle, but obviously I need the winch tightener to keep it up, because if I let go, that thing's going to slam down as fast as gravity will let it. So get the winch tensioner on, and hopefully that keeps her up there. Okay guys, I got this winch tensioner cable installed. You want to wrap it 2.5 times around, and you want to make sure it does not overlap, because you want as much friction as possible. And it tells you that the cable must not overlap itself. So what's going to happen is, as you rotate, it doesn't really move. It's keeping that cable stable. It's keeping it secure. And you're going to want to oil that every time. I haven't oiled mine yet. Wrapped it around a couple of times. Twisted the handle to make sure it worked. But my next step will be to oil that thing so that that cable doesn't wear out, that bearing doesn't wear out, and I don't end up with metal shavings all over the place. So, should look just like this. So now that I've got that all tightened up, I want to install the winch brake drum cover. Use a couple of bolts right there. And this guy protects you from sticking your hands in there, and it gives you that little hole to oil up the winch tensioner. So that should keep a lot of fingers out of there. So I'm out here ready to install the handle. Got the handle here. The instructions say to use the M10 30 carriage bolts, which look like that. They go through the handle, they go through the tubing, they go through a back plate, and then they get hooked to the nuts at the other end. Here's my tubing. There's my bolt. That doesn't work. That doesn't work at all. I'm like 1.5 inches short of what I should be. Really? Here's the actual bag of hardware I should be using. That is not an M1030. It's not even close. Way longer. Doesn't even list the correct bag number, 14. Doesn't even lift the bag. So, getting ready to install the handle. I'm going to use those top bolts. I go through this plate. I go through there. I'm going to have a plate on the other side. And I'm using bag 14, which is the push handle. Pay no mind to the instructions that say use an M1030 carriage bolt. They are way longer than that. Just use the push handle bag and the washers and nuts. So next I've got the water lube tank installation using bag 5, which conveniently has water tank right on it, so it's very easy to find, and it says do not forget to install the washers, so I'll make sure to install the washers with the water tank. Here's that handle all installed, and I've got the throttle cable in there. I've got to put the little eyelet going through that bolt, but it's pretty easy. 17mm on the back for that. So back out here at the sawmill, just finished installing this plate to keep that covered. Installed the water with the tube going all the way down to the blade. Installed the throttle cable all the way back. It's just a screw holding that on, and installed the e-stop. Right now I got this plate turned 90 degrees, but I'm not that worried about it. I know it's an e-stop. Cool thing about this e-stop, reset, you gotta turn it. So that'll keep it engaged as long as you want it. And now, got the first log on there. So, once I get the blade on, some gas and some oil in it, I can start cutting. One other thing I got installed was this lumber production table guide that'll tell you how far you're into the wood. I got mine set to 1 inch because I'm all the way down at the bottom. And that'll give me a good idea when I move the saw head. That gauge moves with it. So that'll give me a good idea of how far I'm into the wood, where I need to be cutting, and how many boards I'm going to get out of there. So, thank you guys for watching, and next time I'll be sawing that log up, and we'll see what's inside. One thing the instructions had you do, which I really like, is they had you run through this through the saw head. So I've got a little bit of slack here, and I've got just enough to get it to the saw blade itself. So that way it won't get caught on anything. The throttle cable I kind of have to hold up, so I'm kind of holding the saw like this when I'm going, with the other hand obviously on the throttle itself. Depending on what I'm cutting and how wide it is, sometimes I have to grab that e-stop cord. That e-stop cord hangs down pretty low. So I may end up trying to run that a little bit differently or a little bit tighter. Or maybe zip tie it. If I can find another hole up here, I can zip tie that up closer to the button. But yeah, just holding that cable seems to keep it from snagging on anything. I did get these felt pads installed. I put them with the gauge, or the hole cut out of them, down. And that seems to go right down on that and clean off the track really well. So, should be really nice to keep the track clean as I'm sawing. So here I've got the first log I did. I got that last 8/4 board still on the sawmill. But I got a pretty good chunk of wood. I'd say between 400 and 500 board feet. Obviously once it dries out, and some of it, like this piece right here, has some damage going up through the middle of it, but I might be able to get a 1x3 out of one side, maybe a 1x4 out of the other side. So once all's said and done, I figure I'll probably have about 225, 250 board feet of aromatic cedar, which is pretty good for a log that just came out of the forest. So I'm using the pallet that came with the saw to help dry it out, and I've got stickers basically between each layer, and I'll spend the next couple of months changing those and making sure I don't get anything growing on the logs because they're still wet. So, it's my setup. Hey, I'd just like to thank you guys for watching those last 2 videos of me putting the saw together and cutting up that board. That whole process took me about 8 to 12 hours over the course of the last 4 weeks. So pretty time intensive, but we'll be getting some better videos out of me cutting the lumber, and hopefully you guys will stick around for that. So thanks for watching. If you guys liked the video, thank you. If you subscribed, thank you as well.